I bet. So do you need to know Linux? Short answer, yep. Here we go. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Top Tech with 50 channel. It's your boy 50, and I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I know I ain't been here as of late. I was not feeling, too well, but I'm back now. I'm back. I got more game for y'all. You feel me? Like, hey, I'm here to get people into this field and answer as many questions and give you as real insight as I can into this field in the IT, cybersecurity, network engineering, and all that. So, before we get started, please be sure to hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe. And if there's anything else, just let me know. I'll be sure to put my social media link in the description, just in case anybody wants to hit me up. All right, cool. So, let's talk about Linux, right? So, I'll say star.nix, which includes Linux and Unix and all that other stuff, because I don't want people to get all technical when I start talking about it. They're like, oh, well, Mac isn't necessarily Linux, is built off a flavor of Unix, which is true, but I just don't want anybody to be that person in the comment section, all right? So I often see people asking if they need to know Linux. These are people who are going to school for IT or cybersecurity or something of the nature, or these are people who are about to get in the field and they're studying and they're doing all of these things, trying to get a job, trying to, give themselves a leg up in this whole, recruitment process, which is jacked up, by the way. So I often see people say that they don't like Linux, or they need to know if, Linux is something that they need to know. And the short answer is yes, but it depends on the role. All right, so I'll run down a few of the more popular roles from a broader standpoint, so that way it covers a lot of ground. So let's say you're Tier 1 help desk desktop support. Do you need to know Linux? If you're in a Windows environment, probably not. Unless you're building something where there's like a software that you have to push out and install, and if there's like a hardware, or if there's like a server component to it, that more times than not will be built off of the flavor of Unix or Linux. So short of that, not really. Or if you have, Linux devices or Linux thin clients, or if you have Mac devices and you want to automate something or you want to use scripts, then yeah, you'll need to know Linux. But if you're in a Windows environment and all your users are Windows based and you're doing desktop support, Tier 1 stuff, help desk stuff, then you really don't need to know it yet. All right, so let's go on up to system admin. System admin, you're doing stuff with Active Directory profiles and all that kind of stuff. You're dealing with servers. And so when dealing with the Windows servers, not necessarily, actually, you don't need to know it if you're only touching Windows servers. Now, if you have to manage any of the stuff in the data centers and your role extends beyond what's on a domain controller, then more times than not, yeah, you're gonna have to know some Unix or Linux. Let's see, what else? If you're a network engineer, you definitely should know some Unix or Linux. You're gonna spend, especially as a network engineer, your main job is to troubleshoot. And when you're troubleshooting, you're usually in a console. And most of these consoles are loosely based or flavors of Unix or Linux anyway. And so Checkpoint, for example, even though you might have like the Clish and the expert mode, you'll still need to have to be able to run Linux commands just in case they're like, all right, cool, so I need you to pull this log file and then upload it to the server. Well, of course, you're going to have to, run the Linux command, create a tarball, navigate to that folder, and then do the whole WinSCP thing. But you're still going to have to be pretty comfortable with, running Unix or Linux commands in order to, bounce through the folders like that and be able to see where you're at. Also, as a network engineer, depending on where you work at, you might have what's called a jump box. And jump boxes are what's used as a way to remote into an environment. So let's say if you're like a third-party contractor, and if you're like a third-party contractor, your client will probably give you like a Windows or a Linux box to log into, which is on their network. And then once you're in there, then you can SSH into, the device or whichever devices, but you're going to have to, be pretty familiar with Unix or Linux, chances are. So as a network engineer, definitely, especially if it's your role, especially if being your role troubleshooting, you'll definitely need to know it. Let's see. Let's do cloud. Cloud will be the last one. So if you're getting into cloud, be it public cloud, which is the AWS, the Azure, the Google Cloud, and I guess now the Oracle, or whether you're doing like the VMware Citrix, you're definitely going to need to know Unix and Linux. All appliances in these data centers are Unix and Linux based. All of them. Like you're really not going to escape it if you're doing anything like with like a hypervisor or like a server or any security appliance, any kind of appliance that's going to plug in to like a rack. 9 times out of 10, that's going to be Unix or Linux. So you're going to need to know that. Also, like if you're I use AWS as an example because I know AWS. So with AWS, you'll have these things called Bastion hosts, which pretty much is the AWS version of a jump server, where you can use the Bastion host to give it like a public-ish IP address, and then you can use that to get into whatever resource you have that has a private address. That EC2 instance is going to be running Unix or Linux. Speaking of EC2 instances, anything that's in AWS that is like a security appliance, like a FireEye or something like that, or any network appliance, chances are it's going to be built on a Linux AMI. If you look in your list of AMIs, you're going to see like a couple Windows AMIs, and you're going to see a whole slew of Linux AMIs. There's a reason for that. There is a reason for that. And so when it comes to knowing Linux, depending on your job role or responsibility, you may not need to know it. But as you progress further in your technical career doing IT, you'll definitely need to know Linux. And I know this might be a little bit of personal bias, but I personally don't trust anybody in IT with senior or architect in their name if they're not familiar with Linux. Don't trust it, because chances are they didn't earn that title. They were just there long enough to get it, but they chances are they haven't done enough to earn that title. It's more so given to them. But anybody who technically has the skills to, be in that role, they have some Unix Linux experience. Now whether they, openly admit it or not, but if you've done anything with appliances, you definitely have Unix and Linux experience. Well, guys, that's all for this. That's all for this one. So if I left anything out or you feel otherwise, be sure to drop a comment below. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. This is the Talk Tech with 50 channel. I'm going to leave my social media in the description just in case anybody wants to, send me any topics, ideas, or anything that they might want me to discuss, or for any questions they'll have. Appreciate y'all.